Hi, Riley. If you really want something, um, find a way to make it happen. And if one road doesn't work out, try a different one. And if that one doesn't work out, try another one. Like you might exhaust all your options and then you can give up. But until then, like keep trying. Because I think if there's anything that having a disability and being a tennis player has taught me, there are different ways to get things done than you might perceive initially. And if something's worth it to you, you'll find a way to make it happen.
Welcome to our Sport Fuels Life podcast, where we're bringing you interviews with coaches and athletes at the top of their game.
This is a community to support coaches, athletes, and fans who share a passion for making the world a better place through athletics.
We're your hosts. I'm Megan.
And I'm Scott. Welcome
Welcome
to
to
Sport
Sport
Fuels
Fuels Life.
Life.
All right, so here today we have Dana Mathewson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me and my two
Yeah.
dogs.
Oh, of course. Well, we love to have the extra company too. I'm a big pet lover myself. But we were also just recently lucky enough to get to talk to your former teammate, Shelby Barron. So we want to get to dive into your story today, and I know you have a lot of really cool things to share. So let's go ahead and start with having you just share a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you got into wheelchair tennis.
Sure. Let's see, I'll try to condense it, but not too much where it's still interesting. So I was born and raised in San Diego, California. I was just like the typical active kid that was outside all the time. I loved soccer. That was like the main sport. I actually ironically had almost no interest in tennis. Me and my brother were like signed up for every extracurricular under the sun. And yeah, just like a very typical able-bodied kid. And then when I was 10 years old, I got transverse myelitis, which is something I had never heard of before, but it's basically an autoimmune disease. And it means that my immune system attacked my spine. So there was really no rhyme or reason for it. Basically, I was completely able-bodied. I was running sprints at soccer practice, and then next thing I knew, my back started to hurt really badly, and I couldn't feel my legs in a matter of 2 hours. So my life completely changed. Transverse myelitis can happen anywhere along your spine. For me, it happened at my waist, but it could happen in your neck, at anywhere. And so, all in all, I'm pretty lucky that my upper body is still completely functional, but I do require the use of a wheelchair now to get around. And that led me to discovering adaptive sports. And to be honest, I mean, I would be lying to you if I was like, yeah, I really love the idea of wheelchair sports, really can't wait to do this as a 10-year-old, you know? Because that's like a huge adjustment in life to admit, number one, that you need a wheelchair. And then number two, to admit that I need to play sports with other people in wheelchairs. Like that, it seems not that big of a deal to me now, but at that time in my life, that was horrible. And, I'd never met anyone that had a disability that was physical, that wasn't someone's grandparent or very, very disabled. I'd never met another person like myself or like a Shelby. And so I couldn't conceptualize what sports with adaptations would be like. And my mom honestly didn't care how I felt, and I'm so grateful for that. But she signed me up for basketball, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair tennis, and tennis was the one that eventually stuck. And I'm so glad it did because it led to the career that I've had. It led to me meeting people like Shelby that you've interviewed, and allowed me to be on Team USA. And yeah, that's kind of the long and short of my backstory.
Gosh, I can't imagine going through something so life-changing at age 10, you said.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be born with something like that, but to just all of a sudden have your life completely change and it's just so unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably something you never imagined for yourself. So I'm happy to hear that you eventually transitioned and saw the light, but I can imagine that was probably such a difficult time. And it was probably so helpful to have your mom there pushing you and
Yes.
supporting you. So, um, I guess would you say that your mom is kind of the driver in helping you navigate that path, or was there another support system for you too?
I mean, I think I was supported by all sorts of different people, my friends at the time, my all sorts of different members of my family, but my mom was a big catalyst for that push towards maybe accepting my new life, if you want to call it that. My mom is also a physician. So is my dad, but my mom is a pediatrician, and so I think in that time in my life where everything was just medical. I didn't really understand what was going on with my body. And not to say that she knew exactly what was going on because transverse myelitis is a really rare freak type of thing. And she was just as confused as me in certain aspects, but she knew more than the average adult. And she was my mom. So I was really leaning on her in that time of my life. And I think that that was a big comfort, which brought us closer. And then she was the one that just kept asking questions like, what are adaptive sports? What are the outlets for my daughter now? Talking to recreational therapists and everyone when I was in the hospital. And so if it wasn't for her going around and asking all those questions and then kind of not accepting that I would just kind of give up on life, if that makes sense, she is the reason why I got into sports and why I kept going to sports when I initially didn't want to. And so, yeah, she does get pretty much all the credit.
Gosh, that is so huge too. I mean, and you mentioned giving up on life, and that is
Yeah,
something that sports really does help direct your energy and your everything into something
absolutely.
positive. And it gives you something that you can work towards and see progress and something that seems like such a dark time. So let's fast forward because you're kind of a big deal. I mean,
No.
you've had some huge successes in the sport. So, I know that you've hit some historical milestones. Would you be able to share some of those with us?
Sure. I think I'm the the best women's wheelchair tennis player that there's ever been in the United States, just in terms of rankings and things like that, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever actually said that one out loud. That feels kind of cool to say.
That's really
Um,
cool.
I was it seems weird to say I was because now I'm retired, but I was the number one in the US for a good chunk of my career. I reached a high of world number seven, world number four, or seven in singles, world number four in doubles, and I'm the first ever American wheelchair tennis player to win a Grand Slam, which was the doubles title at Wimbledon. So yeah, a lot of cool firsts that I get to have attached to my name. And I think selfishly, you kind of hope that no one ever passes you. But of course that is going to happen because like people say records are meant to be broken. And if I don't get past, then that means that we're doing something wrong in terms of developing our players. So I know that day will come, but as of right now, I'm happy sitting as the only one that's done it.
Well, and that's the competitor in you too. It's like you want
Yeah,
to be
I'm
the
very
best.
competitive.
Yeah, and that's what's got you to where you are today. And so talk to us a little bit about what separated you from other players and led you to the successes that you've had to be ranked number one and also going into Tokyo 2024. And so yeah, I guess tell us kind of your approach to the sport and what you think gave you an advantage over your competitors.
Um, do you know that's a really good question. I've done so many different interviews and I've never been asked that before. Um, gosh, I what sets me apart, I think I'm just not to say that other people from our country haven't been as hungry for it, but I think I really want to be the best at whatever I do. Sometimes that's a negative thing where I can just be a little too tenacious about something, but in the sporting world, I think that's great. I think it's something that a lot of tennis players can share and a lot of sports people can share, but especially with tennis, something that's a singular sport and is so technical, you kind of have to have a bulldog mentality to want to keep grinding at it every day. And I think that's just kind of how I am. I'm really stubborn. I don't really like to take no for an answer. And I think that stubbornness and combined with my desire for perfection has helped me find a lot of success. Um, both on and off the tennis court. And I'm really lucky that I have both of those attributes. I think my mom would probably argue that they were like the bane of her existence when I was a teenager, but I think in terms of my career, I think it's helped me a lot.
I can definitely relate to some of those
I'm sure you
characteristics as
can. If you're
well.
an athlete, I think a lot of athletes share those qualities,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it just gives you that edge. And
Yeah.
so What are some of your favorite memories in the sport? I'm sure you've met a lot of cool people and gone to a lot of cool places and had some really neat experiences, but what comes to mind as just maybe one or two of your favorite memories? And they can even just be like, oh, not even a major event, but just on the sidelines with, my teammates or something.
Yeah, I have a lot of happy memories that come to mind when I think of tennis. I think now that I've retired, the very last match that I played, um, I won that match, and it was one that I didn't expect to win. I knew I could do it, but I didn't expect it. And it also was like really, it was an emotional one because it was the last singles match I was ever going to play. So I think that match point and then going over to my coach and giving him a hug and we both just like started crying. That that is a favorite memory of mine now. I think my first ever Paralympic Games has nothing to do with actually playing tennis, but it was my first ever Paralympics, so a big deal. And going in with Team USA and doing the whole team processing and hearing everyone chant USA when you're going in for opening ceremonies. I remember going in and seeing a bunch of different flags, and like you're trained in media training to wave at all the different USA flags that you see. And I just remember going over to where Team USA was going to sit for the show, and I kept seeing one flag that just like would not stop going crazy. And I did my waving and waving and waving, and then I looked closer, and it actually happened to be my family. And it was a humongous stadium. Like and it was sold out from what I remember. So tens of thousands of people in there. And so the odds of being able to see my family within that crowd, because I hadn't seen them in person yet,
Wow.
that trip was like really touching to me. And because that was the start, more or less, of like where my career took off, I had never had any of those experiences yet. And so to be able to feel like I was sharing that big moment with my family was like everything.
Oh,
So I would say that that probably will go down as like my number one favorite sporting memory forever. But then like on court, obviously winning at Wimbledon will forever be an amazing thing. Getting to compete at all four slams for the first time was amazing. I think I have lots of little things. Getting to compete for Team USA, having teammates like Shelby and getting to do things like that at World Team Cups. There's always different things like that that stick out for me for different reasons. And so
yeah.
I don't think I have like one that I would pick for everything, but I think a lot of my favorite memories actually have to do with people as opposed to my performances.
I love to hear that. And that is so true. And I also noticed that your memories, like that come to mind as your most fond memories, are really at the start of your career and at the end. And I think that's kind of
Yeah.
like how a lot of us think. It's like the beginning is just so sweet and it's also new. And then same with the end. But there's so much in between too. But it's
Yes.
those things really stick out and seeing your family and your support. Um, and I'm sure the sport it's been a part with you for so many years now. It's probably a huge part of your identity. So I guess transitioning a little bit in topic. So having been recently retired, what's retired life like?
Retired life is actually not so bad. I'm actually, enjoying myself. Um, I was really worried about not having routine. I'm a very routine-based person, and which I think a lot of athletes are, a lot of people in general are. And so for me to immediately have a disruption to that routine really freaked me out. But I think I've settled into it more than I thought I would. I'm getting to do a lot of hitting and coaching with some of our juniors, which has been really fun. I'm diving into a little bit more of like the tournament organization side. I'm going to be working at the Miami Open this year, which will be pretty cool, organizing one of our wheelchair events for that. Um,
Wow.
so that's like a new project for me, getting to team up with some different charities and philanthropy. So I think I'm getting to use different parts of my brain that I haven't been getting to use for a little while, but also combining them with the tennis side of myself. And that's really fun for me. And it makes it so that I don't have to really say goodbye to tennis, which helps the transition. But I'd be lying to you if I said that like seeing everyone in Australia right now didn't make me feel some sense of missing out or feeling a little bit sad. But I think ultimately I know that I've made the right decision for me. I think it's just definitely it's a process. Like someone told me that they had read a quote that said that every athlete dies twice in their life. And the one of them is obviously the time that you actually pass away, but the other time is when you retire, because it is like a death of part of yourself. And I think that I am, although it's going better than I thought it would, I'm definitely mourning that loss of who I was.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to navigate different ways of finding out who the rest of me is outside of competition, but I'm liking it so far.
Yeah, and I mean the reason I ask is it is such a tough transition for a lot of athletes. You sound
Mhm.
like you're handling it really well. It honestly
So
sounds like,
far.
yeah, like you're living the dream. You get to stay involved in the sport and you're still doing so many cool things, but you're also getting to explore this newfound freedom. But yes, of course, it's like it's sad to maybe not be competing or like be around the same scenes that you were used to being in, but it's just new and different. So, how did you know that it was time for you to retire?
Um, that's a really good question. I think there was never like one moment where I was like, that's it, I'm done. It was just like a slow realization that when I was away on trips, I just really wanted to be home as opposed to wanting to spend more and more weeks away, which is how I used to be. Um, Kind of getting tired of playing the same people over and over again. The grind didn't seem as rewarding as it used to, and it felt more like a grind than a process. And I think that,
Yeah.
all the athletes always say, like, trust the process, trust the process. And I think I've always been very process driven, but after a while, it started to feel more and more frustrating. And I think that's when I knew that like some of the joy had been taken out of that for me. And I think that that's when I realized that the sacrifices that I had to make to play at the level that I wanted to play at weren't worth it as much to me anymore. And that's when I knew it might be time to hang it up.
Yeah, well, and I know that's really good for a lot of people to hear, because it's it's probably a tough decision, for anyone, but
Yeah.
as long as you feel good about it and it sounds like you've definitely chosen the right path and still have so many cool things in store. So, what are some of the biggest lessons you can think of in your sport? I'm sure there was um, plenty of struggle and overcoming different challenges, but and maybe you had to like think a little differently, or obviously sports is also so mental, but if
So
you can just,
mental.
yeah, think about maybe one or two of the biggest lessons that you can think of in your experience.
Gosh. So much. Tennis has humbled me on many occasions, so I think there's a lot of lessons that I've learned. I think as cliche as it might sound, it's just like never giving up. Like if you really care about something and you love it enough, like don't accept perceived failure as failure. Um, tennis, it tennis is one of those sports where it looks really glamorous to a lot of people, but you really lose every single tournament that you play. Like you're losing every week unless you win the entire thing, which just does not happen for anyone. Like that's what made people like Serena so incredible or Roger Federer so incredible is that they won so much, but that's not the norm, even for the best players. Like the best players do lose a heck of a lot. And I think that one, it teaches you that you don't have to be perfect and win everything in order to be really good at something. And then two, it teaches you how to lose and how to bounce back from that, just because it happens so often, if that makes sense, or even just taking a tennis match. I remember being really surprised when I was working with my mental skills coach, and he talked about how the difference in between winning and losing is just doing okay about 53, 54% of the match. Whereas a lot of people might think like, oh, if I want to win, I've got to hit at least 80, 90% of those shots have to be good, but they don't. You just have to be a little bit better than your opponent or make a few less errors than you think. And I think that viewing it that way makes things seem not so insurmountable.
Yeah.
The perfectionist in me really struggles to accept that, even though I know it. It's hard to translate that sometimes, but I think that that was a really good lesson for me to accept that not everything has to be perfect in order for it to be really good.
Yeah, and especially in a game like tennis, it truly is like you just have to be good enough and just a little bit better than that person you're
Yeah,
playing at that time. Because otherwise, winning every match can seem like so much pressure. But you're right, too. The experience of playing each match just builds on, itself one match after the next because you have to get that experience to continue to excel. Otherwise, it's like you
absolutely.
just want to have this perfect streak and maybe not play, or you get too upset to play again. But yeah, you have to keep putting yourself out there. And like you said, just not give up. And that, you pretty much answered the next question I was going to ask, because I was going to ask, basically, what advice would you have for any other athletes in the sports? And I think that is a huge piece of advice that a lot of athletes need to take to heart because you truly, if you, for one, you have to love the sport, but you have to keep coming back to it and know that
Yeah.
it really is a part of the process.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those things where if you love it enough, you'll put the work in. And I think that tennis is also another lesson that it taught me or has forced me to have to do is problem solve. Like if I really want something, I'll problem solve to find a way.
Hmm.
Um, I think I was reading an article actually today about Jessie Pagula, and she's another top-ranked able-bodied tennis player, and she has a tattoo on her back, and someone was asking like, what does that tattoo say? And it says like, I will find a way or I will make one. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's something that I think applies to almost every facet of life. If someone really wants something, you find a way to get it done. But tennis definitely is like that. It's you're out there by yourself. If things aren't going well, you have to figure it out. Um, and I think that that's also advice that I would give to athletes, tennis players, or otherwise. Like, hi, Riley. If you really want something, um, find a way to make it happen. And if one road doesn't work out, try a different one. And if that one doesn't work out, try another one. Like you might exhaust all your options and then you can give up. But until then, like keep trying. Because I think if there's anything that having a disability and being a tennis player has taught me, there are different ways to get things done than you might perceive initially. And if something's worth it to you, you'll find a way to make it happen.
Wow. And in the way you talk, you can tell you have learned so much through all of
Thanks.
your
I'm glad it sounds
experiences.
that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I'm listening to a coach right now. Like you're
Oh,
telling.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, so did you gain all of this, would you say, like from yourself and your own experiences, or did you also have a mentor? I know you mentioned you had a mental coach or your tennis coach. Was there anyone else who kind of helped guide you in the right direction and say, this might be an upsetting moment, but let's look forward to the next time and I guess putting it together, like connecting the dots. Did you have someone kind of help you connect the dots?
There hasn't been just one person. I think that whether it's seeing other people experience the same losses that I have and seeing how they bounce back from it and learning from them, learning from other players that came before me, and just emulating how they handle things. Different coaches that I've had throughout the years, coaches of other players that I've gotten to learn things from. There hasn't been one person, but there's been a multitude of people. Like the cliche adage of like it takes a village, like it really does. And I've learned from a lot from my own experience, but it would be rude for me not to give credit to all the other people that I've had in my life, whether they be opponents or
Yeah,
coaches or teammates or different people tell you something when you're down or people encourage you when you're doing great and those things stick with you. And I think
yeah,
that all of those things have kind of led me to have the perspective I do now.
yeah. Well, it really adds up, and clearly you've got a long list of people to thank for
Thanks.
giving you all of this knowledge. But, Dana, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experiences with us. Where can our listeners follow you, or maybe learn a little bit more about you and your story, or just kind of see what you're up to?
So the best way to see what I'm doing, the one that I'm actually the best at updating is probably my Instagram. So that's just my name, Dana, and then there's a dot and then Mathewson, and Mathewson only has one T. A lot of people get that wrong. But I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on all those things. But I would say if you actually really want to know what I'm doing up to date, probably Instagram is the best way to find me.
Love that. Yeah, I'm on Instagram as well. It's probably my favorite to post on too. So
It's the easiest and yeah.
yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Sport Fuels Life, Dana, and we look forward to following the rest of your journey. I can tell you're still gonna be around in tennis, so we're looking forward to seeing some more.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. If you like this episode, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review so others can find us more easily. It really helps us get the word out and it means a lot to us.
We are always looking for new stories to share here on our show. So if you know someone that would be a great guest, tell us their story by nominating them on our website at sportfuelslife.com. Thanks
Thanks
for
for listening.
listening.